So, standing right behind me, if y'all can see that cleared lot over there, there's gonna be a project that I will be starting here pretty soon. Today, all we really need to do is get some temporary power onto this panel. Luckily, they already had a pole here, so it's gonna be easy for us just to whip into it. Got a plug off to the side, so all the contractors will have power to work on the property. It's not going to be too big of a house, so it should be pretty straightforward, but I will walk y'all through the entire process from start to finish on getting electrical done. If y'all can see way over there, that's another project we're working on right now. Hopefully in another episode I can walk y'all through what we got going on over there. We're gonna start rough here in a couple weeks. So today I will be walking y'all through installing a temporary outlet for a new job site, so that way the trades can have some power. We are the ones that provide that power after all. So what we've got here is a 200 amp panel. I believe it's a Siemens. Yes, Siemens 200 amp panel. Plan is to install a single 20 amp breaker right there, whip out of the bottom with some seal tight conduit, and put a quad box right there, so that way they can have 4 outlets. Should be enough to power whatever generators and air compressors the framers will be using. So let's get started. So first step obviously is opening up the panel, seeing what we got inside. Most of these panel covers are held on by a 5/16 screw. Most of them typically have a flat head on it as well, so you can use either or. Be careful for wasp. They tend to make their hives in there because nobody will bother them. So looks like we've got enough space to get everything installed. Got the proper breaker for this project. It's a 20 amp single pole Siemens type QP breaker. That'll go right in there like that. And then we've got some seal tight flexible conduit. Will be coming out the bottom of the panel right here, whipping out and putting a quad box on the back side of it. I'm going to be using a weatherproof quad box 2 gang with a in-use wet rated cover. We call them bubble covers. And then I have a couple of weather resistant GSCI that we'll be using, so that way their tools down the line will be protected. Got some connectors, straps, and the most important part is the wire. Whenever you're running an outlet in an exterior location where it's going to be exposed to the elements, especially getting wet, if you're running a flexible conduit, per code you actually have to use a certain type of wire. This is THHN 12 gauge. You're not allowed to use the typical yellow or white Romex that you'll see inside of houses. That wire is not rated for wet location uses. You'll find that in the NEC code. I believe it's article 330 or 334 maybe. Somebody will look it up and tell me if I'm wrong, but for this case we will be using 12 gauge THHN. So let's get started.
So first we'll measure out our conduit. Kind of ballpark it, see where we're going to place this outlet at. My plan is to come out at the bottom, whip around the top, put the outlet about waist high, just so that way it's not exposed to so much rain. So right about there should be good.
Next we'll go ahead and feed our wire through. Now they do sell this wire in a bunch of different colors. I only have black right now, so we're just gonna phase it. Phasing is whenever you identify the wire for its use. So if you're gonna be using the black wire as a ground wire, you should be using green electrical tape. And then if you're using the black wire for a neutral, obviously you're gonna wanna wrap that in white electrical tape. If you're using it for hot, obviously you don't need to do anything. You can just use the black wire. So let me grab some tape so we can get green and white tape.
Give ourselves a couple feet of slack on each end, so we have plenty to work with. Got the black one in. Next thing we're going to do is the neutral. So, take the white tape, go ahead and phase that. Properly identify it so we know what it's going to be used for. So we got one side of it phased. We'll run through and then we'll phase the other side. Check which wire it is, you're going to have to trace it down later. Phasing the second side. Alright. Now the ground wire. So this one we're actually going to use green tape. Back to the conduit as well. And we'll phase the other side of it, green, for ground.
Now what I have here are some 1/2-inch Siltec connectors. These are specifically for liquid tight conduit. They are waterproof, water resistant. So the way these work, you'll slide the wires through them, bring them down to the conduit, loosen up that cap. You see these little teeth right there? You're gonna squeeze those over the conduit, and then as you tighten on this cap, it's gonna squeeze those teeth around the conduit so it doesn't move and it stays in place. So as you tighten that cap right there, the teeth are gonna clamp down on the inside to that conduit so it doesn't come off. And you've got a liquid tight connection. I'm gonna go and do the same thing on the other side.
Again, loosen that cap. Put those teeth over the conduit. Tighten up the cap. It just needs to be hand tight. You don't need to pull out any crazy tools and over torque it. Just enough. Alright. Now, let's see what knockout we're going to use. I'm going to use this one over here in the corner. Closer to the pole. So, go ahead and knock that. 1/2-inch knockout, since we are using 1/2-inch conduit for 1/2-inch connector. And we'll remove our
1/2-inch ring or locking nut that's going to go on the inside of the panel. Now these do come with this little black gasket that's going to stay underneath on the bottom of the panel. That's what's going to create that somewhat of a waterproof, weatherproof barrier. Okay, so through our 1/2-inch knockout, we'll feed our wires into the panel. Careful not to touch any of the internals. So you don't shock yourself. And we'll replace that locking nut back through the inside. And we'll just give it a hand tighten for right now until we get everything in place.
Which, lucky for me, this pole turns out to be metal. So, a couple extra steps to get that done.
So as you can see, we've got our seal tight coming out on the back end. Coming into the bottom of the panel, you can see that black bushing, black rubber gasket, I should say. That tells you we're going to keep in there. It's going to create that waterproof seal so water doesn't seep into the bottom of this. Coming out, we've got our phase conductors, and the plan is to whip up and put that quad outlet somewhere around there. So let's get that all made up. So come up the pole, snap that conduit on, and get it installed right there. So grab my knee pad. My knees are getting bad. If you're gonna get started in the electrical trade, or really any trade for that matter, highly advise investing in some good knee pads. Especially if you're gonna be rolling around in attics or working on your legs all day. Will go a long way the older you get, trust me. Alright. So with this box, we've got a couple of these inserts that we will be tying into here. These inserts will keep the water out. So since we're going to be using this, we're going to be coming in from the bottom. So we're obviously not going to cap that one. Our flexible conduit is going to come into the bottom right there and take up that spot. So with one of these little bad boys, we'll be putting these on the top hole. Tying it down, but don't over tighten it. And the second one will go into the back hole, since that is not being used. It's starting to get a little sunny. Today we're supposed to have a heat index of 114, I believe. That's no bueno. Make sure y'all stay hydrated as well. Lucky for me, I've had a whole cup of coffee. So whenever you're mounting these weatherproof boxes, you've got two ways of doing it. I'm not sure if y'all can see, but a lot of times on the inside they have these pre-made holes where you can drill out your own holes so you can screw it into the back. Or they'll send you with these little connectors. These little connectors will sit right in these notches here and get secured on with a screw, and that gives you a place to put a screw through and attach it to whatever you're mounting it to. Let me show you how that looks. So those will screw into the little pre-made holes that they have here. You'll have a little notch that helps line it up, and then this will give you a place to put a screw. You'll want to put one on each corner. They typically only ever send two, so you pick the outer corners to install them in, so that way you can screw it into the pole or whatever you're using. So now that we've got that made, we're gonna get our other end of the seal tight. We're not going to be using the lock nut because this already has threads inside of it, so the connector will screw directly into that. conductors into the box. And we'll screw the box into our connector. Again, these don't need to be torqued down to a certain specification that I know of. Hand tighten has always worked for me, just to kind of keep that seal intact. That black gasket, if you can see it in between the box and the connector, keep that intact, because the more you tighten it down, that gasket will tend to spread out, and then you don't really have the seal you want on the bottom. So got our conduit in the box, our wires in the box. Now all that's left to do is mark where we're going to drill our holes into this pole, put some screws in it. Alrighty, so we got a drill bit, a couple of machine screws, this box where we want it. Again, I try to put it up high just to kind of keep water out of it as much as possible. Let's go ahead.
Did exactly what I was afraid it was going to do.
Well, we got it secured. Let's get our GFIs installed. So here we will be using these weather rated 20 amp GFCI outlets. I'm going to be installing 2 of them, so each side will be protected. You could use just one and then a weather resistant outlet on the load side of this, because if you're going to be using a 20 amp regular breaker, which is what we have inside that panel, whenever that power comes out of that breaker, there's no GFCI protection on that breaker, so you have to use an outlet that is GFCI protected. So that power coming out of that main breaker is going to come into the back side of this outlet. On all of these GFCI outlets, you will have 2 markings on the back. One side of these terminals will be marked line and the other side will be marked load. Not every GFCI is the same. Some will have line on top and load on bottom. Some will have load on top and line on bottom. So you need to make sure you read the back of the outlet to see where it's at. So power coming into the outlet straight out of the breaker is always going to go to the line side. Line is power coming into the outlet. Load is what's going to be supplying your load. That's going to be going to the remaining outlets. If we were going to be using a GFCI receptacle with a weather resistant outlet next to it, you would want to put power on line side and then run a small piece of wire, well, 2 wires, the hot and the neutral, coming out of the load into the weather resistant plug that's going to be next to it. In our case, we're going to be using 2 weather resistant GFCIs because I got a better deal on them. So both, we have one set of conductors coming out of the panel into the box. That's going to go onto the load side of this GFCI. So then from the same load GFCI terminals, we're going to have another set of conductors coming out of the back of this GFCI going into the line conduct terminals of the second GFCI. So it's a little hard to imagine as I'm explaining it, but once I get it wired up, I'll show y'all what it's supposed to look like when it's done.
Another
Good rule of thumb is whenever you receive these outlets, they'll usually have some type of sticker over the load terminals, just letting you know that, hey, these are not the line side, these are the load that's going to be connected to other outlets. Line side will be left open. Good rule of thumb is even though they've got a sticker over these terminals, you want to remove that sticker, tighten up those screws on the outlet, and then replace the sticker if you're not going to be using the load side, because we do not want loose screws. Loose screws equals loose connections equal arcing. Arcing is not our friend. In case you've never wired up an outlet before, whether it be a regular outlet, GFCI outlet, weather resistant GFCI outlet, in most situations for single phase use, you're going to have a grounding screw that's usually labeled green. You're going to have a screw that's typically a silver color. That's going to be your neutral connector, okay? And then you're gonna have a screw that's either gonna be gold or a brass color, or in this case it's black. Obviously that's gonna go to your black wire. For GFCI outlets, typically they have, I'm not sure if y'all can see it, but on the back it'll be labeled black wire or hot wire, and then the other side will be labeled white wire or neutral wire. So something to pay attention to. A lot of people will try to DIY an outlet and mess up that simple little thing and call me back out to fix it. So don't screw it up. Alrighty guys, we've got her all wired up. Let me show you what we did. So in the bottom of the box we got our conductors, 3 of them, hot, neutral, ground, coming from the breaker box. Okay, we've got our ground coming into this box around our ground screw. We are using a metal box connected to a metal pole, so you want to make sure that this thing is grounded along with all the connection points for the receptacle, which this yoke is what it's called. This metal frame of the outlet is on the interior of the outlet, is all going back to the grounding screw on there. Okay, so we've got it wrapped around the grounding screw. We've got a pigtail is what we call it right here, with 2 more wires coming out, 1 ground for each GFCI receptacle. Like I said, we've got the line side coming into the line terminals on the outlet, and then here we've got spot for a second pair of wires which comes out again from the line side, going into the line side of the second GFCI receptacle. Black with the black screw, neutral with the silver screw, and then we've got our green on the green screw for our ground. Okay, so there are other ways to do this. You could bring those wires into another set of pigtails back here, so you can pigtail the hot wire into the back of the box and bring 2 more out, 1 to each GFCI. You can do the same thing with the neutral as well. I am using what we call a shallow box. It's not very deep, so I don't have a lot of space on the inside. GFCI receptacles, even though I'm using these Leviton slim fit ones, which have a slimmer profile and depth for the box, they still do take up a lot of room on there. So I opt to save me a couple nuts and go this route. Been doing it a long time. The reason I like to do it with 2 GFCI receptacles instead of 1 GFCI receptacle and then an outlet on the lone side is that I've been doing this a lot. The guys that plug their generators or air compressors, whatever it is that they're plugging into these, a lot of times their cords are torn up. They are torn up, they're not grounded. So what happens is this outlet ends up getting fried. Now if you end up frying the GFCI, guess what? The load coming out of that GFCI is not going to work, so the outlet next to it will not have power. The upside to this is that I've got power going straight to each of these outlets. So if one of these GFCIs burns out, the other one will still have power, assuming they don't melt the terminals. Try to plug something heavy duty into a 20 amp 120 volt outlet, which trust me, they've tried. So let's get this all buttoned up and strapped down, and I'll show y'all what it looks like at Now we're going to be hooking up to the breaker in the box. Let me grab it and show y'all. So we've got our wires coming into the bottom. We've got our black conductor, our ground conductor, and our neutral conductor. This is the breaker we're going to be using. So if you can see here on this panel, we've got our main power coming in from the top. Okay, we've got our 2 hots and our neutral. So this is going to be our neutral. At a main panel, your neutral and grounds are bonded together. So we've got both of these bars here on either side. One primarily has neutrals on it, the other one has nothing on it. So what I like to do is, even though they're bonded together via this bar that runs across the back of it, you can see this little grounding screw bonds the panel to the whole unit. Typically I still like to put my neutral on one side and my ground on a separate grounding bar. So if you can see up top, they left us a nice little grounding bar. That's where I'm going to be tying my ground into. My neutrals will come into here, and then my hot will come straight into the single pole breaker. So typically in a situation like this, you're supposed to be turning off the power, especially if you're working in a panel like this. Rule number 1 is always turn off the power. Unfortunately, in our case, we've got this panel feeding a smaller house on the property that's got a well hooked up to it and a shed for all their farm equipment. So unfortunately, we cannot turn it off. So only if you're experienced and you've been zapped a few times, I would still not advise doing this and contacting a qualified professional such as myself. But if it is something that you need to do, just make sure you're careful, never grounding yourself out. And what I mean by that is touching one of these terminals while wearing a pair of Crocs. No, if you're going to be working on electricity, you need to be wearing the proper PPE, which includes shoes that are rated for electricity. My preferred brand is Red Wing, even though not sponsored yet. But Red Wing has a good line of shoes, along with many other brands that are rated for, I believe it's 600 volts. So in the event that I do accidentally ground myself out, at least my feet will not be making contact with the earth. And if you ever get shocked, the way electrocution happens is electricity comes into your body on one side, and then electricity is always going to try to find the path of least resistance. So for your body, it comes in and it's trying its damnness to get out. So it's looking for that path of least resistance. If you're wearing open-toed shoes and your feet are in contact with the ground, where's that electricity going to go? Straight through you into the ground. Or if your body, another body part is making contact with some piece of metal, it's going to go out through there. So if you are working on a panel that is live, as I said, we've got our green wire going to the GFCI receptacles tied onto the ground bar. That ground bar is bonded on the panel. Coming up to the other side, we've got our neutral wire tied into the neutral bar. Okay. And then we've got our hot wire coming right into the breaker itself. 20 amp breaker feeding 2 GFCI receptacles. Looks like somebody tried to shove some square D breakers in there. But anyway, got it all wired up. Let's power it on and make sure everything works. Moment of truth. Nothing went bang. Coming over to our receptacles. Reset each one. I'm not sure if y'all can see it, but we got the green light on both of them. I know it's pretty hard to see with the daylight. Let me grab my plug tester to verify everything's working properly. So So this handy little gizmo is a plug tester. It'll tell you whether your outlet is wired right or wrong. So, not sure if y'all can see that. But we got both of the orange lights on there. Okay. Alright, let's get the rest of this buttoned up, get these straps on, and get out of here. All buttoned up. Last thing left to do is label the breaker. Always label the breaker so the homeowner knows exactly what you did. We're gonna call this one temporary GFCI outlet. We got the panel cord back on, temporary GFCI outlet. Got our conduits coming out the bottom. A couple of straps on there. A nice pretty quad plug. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's how you install a temporary outlet. If this was a wooden pole, it would be a lot easier. So I'm gonna do some workarounds, but either way we got it done. Really hope y'all learned something today. Until next time, later.